My name is Tessa Monroe. I was 35 years old when my mother handed my brother the life I had built. On the Tuesday night before Thanksgiving, in front of more than 300 people in Mill River's Fellowship Hall, she let Ryan step toward a $300,000 foundation award for the community pantry I had carried for years, then said into the microphone, "Tessa has always had a good heart, but Ryan is the one who brought this pantry into the light." The room clapped. Ryan smiled. My mother kept one hand on his sleeve, as if she were presenting him to the town, and quietly moving me out of the frame. The master of ceremonies reached for the oversized check beside the podium, the one with all those zeros printed in black, and that was when the night turned. The check stayed flat on the table. No one picked it up. Ryan's hand hung in the air a second too long, and my mother's smile tightened before she understood why. I did not stand up and shout. I did not correct her in front of the town. I only looked at the woman near the podium who had already looked down at her folder, then back at me. By the end of that night, the applause would not be enough to move the money, and my brother would learn that standing in my place did not make it his. Before I tell you what happened on that stage, I want you to listen for the quiet parts. If this story reaches the place in you that has ever been called helpful, while someone else stood in your light, then like this video, and subscribe only if it feels worth staying with. And if you are watching from a kitchen table, a parked car, a bedroom after midnight, or anywhere you have learned to be quiet for too long, tell me where you are watching from, and what time it is there. To understand why Ryan could smile so easily that night, you have to go back to Mill River, to the room behind the church, and to the Monroe family, where my father fixed things for a living. My mother protected appearances like they were heirlooms. My brother was treated like a promise, and I learned early how small a daughter could be made to feel. Mill River was the kind of town where people knew your grandparents before they knew your name. It sat between soybean fields and two-lane roads, with a courthouse clock that ran 4 minutes slow, and a grocery store where the cashier asked about your mother before she asked whether you wanted paper or plastic. We were not poor, in the way people whisper about, and we were not comfortable in the way people show off. We were steady. My father, Harold Monroe, worked maintenance for the public schools for 27 years. He carried a ring of keys on his belt that jingled when he walked, and his hands always smelled faintly of machine oil, lemon cleaner, and the old metal of boiler rooms. My mother, Evelyn Monroe, worked the front desk at Dr. Haskins's dental office, where she learned how to keep her voice polished even when her eyes had already judged the room. Our house was a one-story brick ranch on Juniper Lane with a narrow carport, a maple tree that cracked the sidewalk, and a kitchen where every important family decision happened while somebody was wiping a counter. My brother Ryan was 2 years younger than me, but nobody in our house treated him like the younger one. He was the son with the easy smile, the clean haircut, the varsity jacket still hanging in his closet long after high school ended. People called him natural. Natural leader. Natural speaker. Natural with people. I was called dependable, which sounded kind, until I noticed it was only said when there was work no one else wanted. In my family, Ryan was praised for walking into a room, and I was praised for cleaning it after he left. That was the rule, even before anyone said it out loud. Ryan forgot things and people laughed. I remembered things, and people added more to the list. When Ryan turned 16, my parents rented the church fellowship hall for his birthday because he had made the varsity football team that fall. There were blue and white balloons, 3 sheet cakes, and a poster my mother made that said "Proud of you, Ryan" in block letters. When I won a small county scholarship my senior year, my mother said we would celebrate at home because girls don't need a spectacle for doing what they're supposed to do. She made meatloaf. Ryan ate 2 pieces and asked if there was ketchup. My father squeezed my shoulder when he passed behind my chair, but my mother spent most of dinner asking Ryan whether he had returned Coach Avery's call. When Ryan scraped the side of my father's truck on a fence post, my mother said, "Boys learn by doing." When I borrowed the sedan to deliver canned goods for the church youth drive, she wrote down the odometer reading on the back of an envelope and told me gas was not free. Ryan was introduced as my son, the one with big plans. I was introduced as my daughter, the one who helps out. Those words followed me like a second name. My father saw more than he said. He was not a dramatic man. He did not make speeches at the dinner table, or correct my mother in front of people. But he noticed who stayed after church to fold tables. He noticed who refilled the coffee urn without being asked. He noticed who sat with Mrs. Alvarez after her husband died, because everyone else thought bringing a casserole was enough. One Saturday afternoon, when I was 27, he found me in the small room behind the church gym, stacking cans of soup on a warped wooden shelf. The room had once held Christmas pageant costumes, broken folding chairs, and a cardboard palm tree with one missing leaf. It smelled like dust, old hymnals, and the faint sweetness of the pancake breakfasts the men's group held twice a year. I told him I thought we could use it better, nothing big. Just a place where a few families could pick up groceries without waiting in a public line or explaining their whole life to a committee. Dad stood in the doorway with his key ring in his hand. He looked at the shelves, then at me, then at the scuffed door that stuck whenever the weather changed. He took one key off the ring and pressed it into my palm. Kindness still needs a name on the door, Tess, not for pride, for responsibility. I remember the weight of that key more clearly than I remember what I had for dinner that night, brass. Warm from his hand. Small enough to disappear in my pocket. Heavy enough to change the next 8 years of my life. For a long time, I thought being behind that door meant it did not matter whether anyone saw me. I thought if the shelves were full, if the lists were clean, if no one had to feel small while asking for help, then my name could stay quiet. I did not know that one day, the name on that door would be the only thing standing between my brother and $300,000. 3 years after my father died, the room behind the church was no longer a dusty corner with dented cans and a sticky light switch. It had regular shelves, 2 used freezers, a donation calendar, and a quiet rule that nobody who came in would be made to perform their hardship for anyone's approval. We had serving hours, delivery days, senior boxes, school break bags, and volunteers who knew not to ask questions with an audience nearby. I did not build it because I wanted my picture in the paper. I built it because I had watched too many people in Mill River pretend they were fine while counting dollars in the cereal aisle. The first month after Dad's funeral, I went to the church every Tuesday and Thursday evening after work. The hallway lights buzzed overhead, and the old floor tiles gave a little under my shoes near the back exit. I wiped mouse droppings from the bottom shelf, threw away expired cans, and wrote the first pickup schedule on a yellow legal pad. Ryan came by once, wearing a quarter-zip sweater and carrying coffee he had not brought for anyone else. He stood in the doorway, took a picture of the shelves, and said, "This could be something." Then his phone rang, and he left before the first delivery arrived. That Sunday, Mrs. Eldridge from the Women's Circle asked my mother whether the pantry was my idea. My mother smiled that careful front desk smile and said, "Ryan has always had such a heart for community work. Tessa is wonderful with the little details." I was standing close enough to hear the click of her bracelet against her coffee cup. I did not correct her. My father had been gone 36 days, and grief had made every room feel like thin glass. I told myself it did not matter. The boxes mattered. The families mattered. My mother's sentence did not put food on a shelf or take it off one. By the second month, it mattered more. A regional grocery distributor agreed to send us dented boxes and overstock twice a month if someone could be there at 6:30 on Saturday mornings. I was there with gloves, a clipboard, and a thermos of coffee that tasted like metal by the time the truck arrived. The driver backed into the church lot, while frost still silvered the grass. I counted cases of pasta sauce, checked dates on baby formula, and separated anything with torn packaging. Around 8, Ryan pulled in wearing clean jeans and a jacket that looked new. 2 men from the local business association had arrived to see whether their companies should donate. Ryan shook both their hands before he looked at the pallets. "We're trying to build something here," he said, standing in front of the open truck as if he had been unloading it all morning. One of the men turned to me and asked, "And what part do you handle?" Ryan answered before I could open my mouth. "She keeps us organized, you know, Tessa." He smiled when he said it, like he had complimented me. My mother, who had come with a tray of muffins for the visitors, touched Ryan's back and beamed at the men. I held a case of canned peaches against my hip and felt the cardboard soften under my glove where frost had dampened it. "We have 24 more cases to move before 9, I said. The men nodded and stepped forward to help. Ryan checked his watch. At Sunday dinner that spring, I told my family the pantry had served 72 households in March. 72. I had written the number down because each household meant someone had walked through that door, taken what they needed, and left with their eyes still level. My mother was slicing a lemon pie she had made because Ryan was stopping by after a council networking breakfast. "That's nice, honey," she said. "Ryan, tell us about that meeting with Mr. Calloway." Ryan leaned back and talked for 15 minutes about partnerships, visibility, and getting the right people excited. He did not mention a single delivery, a single family, or a single shelf. I tried once more. "The biggest need is evening pickup. People working hourly jobs can't come during church office hours." My mother slid Ryan the largest piece of pie and said, "Numbers are nice, honey, but people follow vision." There it was, clean as a knife laid beside a plate. I had given her 72 families, and Ryan had given her a tone of voice. She remembered his. That December, the pantry changed because of a woman named Denise Porter. She came in 2 weeks before Christmas, with a red scarf wrapped around her hair, and 2 children waiting in the car, because she did not want them to hear her ask. She kept apologizing before she even crossed the threshold. I remember the wet print her boots left on the floor mat, the way her fingers worried the zipper pull on her coat, and how quickly she looked away from the shelf marked personal care. I told her she did not have to explain anything. She took a breath so sharp it sounded like it hurt. After she left, I changed the whole intake process. No one had to state their need in front of another person. No one had to prove they were hungry enough to deserve a bag of rice. My mother visited that week because the church ladies were decorating the fellowship hall. She looked at the new signs, the numbered pickup slips, and the little table where people could choose without being watched. For one moment, I thought she saw it. Then she said, "You've always been good at making yourself useful." The words were soft, that made them worse. Useful was what people called a chair, a spare key, a roll of tape in a drawer. Useful did not have a face. Useful did not need thanks. In April, I presented a simple expansion plan to the church committee: more evening hours, a second freezer, a rotating delivery schedule for seniors who could not drive after dark. I had 3 pages of numbers and a map of the neighborhoods we were missing. The meeting was almost over when Ryan came in late, apologizing with both hands raised as if late arrival were a kind of charm. He stood near the whiteboard, scanned the room, and said, "What Tessa is showing is exactly why we need to bring dignity back into this conversation." People nodded. Someone clapped. He had repeated one word from my plan, and made it sound like he had invented the work underneath it. Afterward, while I gathered the papers no one had asked to keep, I heard my mother near the coffee station. "See," she said to Mrs. Eldridge, "that's why people listen to your brother." She did not lower her voice. Maybe she thought I was used to it by then. Maybe I was. But used to a thing is not the same as untouched by it. I slid the map into my folder and pressed my thumb over the corner until it bent. By late summer, the pantry had become part of Mill River's rhythm. On Monday mornings, retirees dropped off paper bags of canned vegetables. On Wednesdays, 2 high school girls restocked pasta after volleyball practice. On Fridays, I made delivery calls from the small desk by the back door, the one with a wobbling leg and a drawer that stuck if you pulled too fast. Ryan started calling it our Monroe family project. He said it at the gas station. He said it after church. He said it in a short interview with the county paper while standing in front of shelves he had not stocked. In the photograph, he had one hand on a box of cereal as if he had placed it there himself. At the fall town fair, the pantry had a booth between the Quilting Guild and the volunteer fire department. I had spent the morning matching volunteers with delivery routes because 2 drivers had canceled, and 1 senior apartment building had changed its door code. Ryan stood at the front of the booth shaking hands. My mother sat beside him in a navy dress, handing out brochures with the Monroe name highlighted in the first paragraph. Mrs. Alvarez, who had known my father since before I was born, came up slowly with her cane and said to me, "Tessa, those Tuesday boxes helped me after my surgery. You packed the low-salt soup." Ryan stepped closer and said, "We're just glad our family can serve." Mrs. Alvarez looked at him, then back at me. She did not argue. She only patted my hand. Her palm was dry and small and warm. That tiny kindness almost undid me more than my brother's sentence did. Sometimes being seen by the right person makes it harder to pretend you are fine with being erased by the wrong ones. The week before Thanksgiving, I was in the church kitchen checking the freezer temperature log when my mother came in wearing her camel coat and the pearl earrings she saved for public events. The room smelled like bleach, coffee, and thawing dinner rolls for the holiday baskets. She told me the foundation award would be announced at the town Thanksgiving dinner, and that Ryan needed to be ready, because this will be his moment. I set the pen down carefully. The pantry is not Ryan's, I said. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. My mother's mouth tightened, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me. Don't be jealous of your brother just because he knows how to lead. She said it as if she were correcting a child at a grocery store. Behind her, the freezer clicked on, and the thermometer needle trembled just above 0. I looked at the clipboard in front of me, at the numbers I had written every week, at the rows of names coded so people's privacy stayed intact. My mother saw a daughter making trouble. I saw shelves that would be empty by February, if this became a family performance instead of a responsibility. Ryan came in 5 minutes later, rubbing his hands together from the cold, and asking if I could send him a few numbers, so he would sound prepared. Sound prepared. Not be prepared. He leaned against the counter, smiling the way he did when he wanted a favor to look like a family moment. Come on, Tess, he said. You know the details better than anybody. My mother turned toward me, with the expression she used at Dr. Haskins's office when a patient questioned a bill. Pleasant. Firm. Already decided. I sent him nothing that night. Not because I wanted him to fail, and not because I was plotting some grand scene. I sent nothing because the pantry was not a speech prop, and people who depended on it were not decorations for Ryan's comeback. I locked the back door after they left, and the old brass key my father had given me stuck for half a second before turning. I stood there with my hand on the knob, listening to the empty hall settle around me. That was the last quiet night before the town started clapping. By Wednesday morning, the award had a number attached to it in writing, $300,000. I saw it first in an email from the Loden Family Foundation, sent at 8:12 a.m. While I was standing in the church hallway with a stack of empty produce crates against my hip, the subject line was formal, almost plain. Final confirmation for Mill River, Community Pantry Operating Support. Plain words can carry heavy things. I read the email twice before I moved. The award was not a ceremonial gift to the Monroe family. It was restricted operating support for the pantry's approved expansion plan, tied to the person responsible for reporting, scheduling, storage compliance, volunteer coordination, and use of funds. My name appeared where responsibility lived. Not because I had asked for applause, and not because anyone in my family had decided to be fair. It was there because every month, when something needed to be counted, corrected, signed, checked, or explained, I had been the person who did it. The foundation contact was Patricia Lowell. I had spoken with her 6 times by then, usually from the little desk by the pantry door, with the freezer humming behind me and a pen tucked behind my ear. She did not waste words. She asked for numbers, dates, service areas, backup plans, refrigeration needs, and whether our privacy process had held up under increased demand. Ryan would have called those details boring. Patricia called them stewardship. That was the first time I understood the difference between being visible and being accountable. I did not call my mother. I did not forward the email to Ryan with a sentence sharp enough to leave a mark. I did not take a screenshot and post it anywhere. I sat at the desk, opened the old binder with the cracked blue spine, and began checking everything again. Pantry hours, delivery routes, senior boxes, school break bags, freezer temperatures, volunteer shifts, household counts by month. I wrote Patricia a clean update before noon, with no family complaint tucked between the lines. If anyone ever looked back at that day, they would see a program director doing her job. That mattered. A loud woman can be dismissed. A careful woman has to be answered. I knew that by then. If I had raised my voice, my mother would have said I was jealous. Ryan would have said I was emotional. The church office would have been pulled into a family argument instead of a funding issue, and the pantry would have become a stage for people who did not need groceries deciding who sounded nicer. So I stayed quiet. Not weak. Quiet. Ryan did not stay quiet. By Thursday afternoon, he had called the print shop and asked them to revise the dinner program. I found out because June Wilkes, who volunteered at the church office, stepped into the pantry holding a proof sheet between 2 fingers like it had grease on it. Tessa, she said, I thought you should see this before it goes to print. Under the section marked Community Impact Spotlight, Ryan's name sat in bold. Mine appeared once, 2 lines lower, in a sentence thanking Tessa Monroe and other pantry volunteers for support. Support, the word was small enough to fit anywhere. That was why people used it. I called the print shop myself. My voice stayed even. I asked them to hold the proof until the church office confirmed the language. The young man on the phone sounded nervous and said Ryan had told them the wording had already been approved by the family. The family is not the operating authority, I said. Then I gave him June's extension and hung up before my hand could tighten around the receiver. Across the room, a box of canned green beans sat half open on the sorting table. I taped it shut, wrote the date on the side, and put it where it belonged. My mother texted at 6:04 that evening. Wear something simple Tuesday. Stay near the volunteer table so Ryan can move easily. I looked at the message while standing in the grocery store aisle, between the rice and the canned tomatoes, with my basket cutting into my forearm. She did not ask whether I was coming. She did not ask what the pantry needed. She placed me the way she placed folding chairs before company arrived. Useful, out of the path. I typed. I will be where the pantry needs me. Then I deleted it. I typed nothing back. There was still work to do, and I had learned not every insult deserved the energy of proof. I bought 25 pounds of rice, because Mrs. Alvarez had told me the smaller bags ran out first. I bought shelf labels because the old ones were curling at the corners. At the register, the scanner beeped through each item, steady and indifferent. That sound helped. On Friday, Ryan came by during distribution hours wearing a navy blazer and no coat, though the wind had turned cold enough to redden his ears. He stood beside the welcome table while volunteers moved around him. I'm trying to get the messaging right, he said, loud enough for two women packing senior boxes to hear. This is a big moment for our family. He picked up one of the intake slips, turned it sideways, and frowned like a man studying something beneath him. You should simplify these. Donors like clean stories. I took the slip from his hand and placed it back in the tray. Recipients like privacy, I said. The women packing boxes did not look up, but one of them stopped folding a paper bag for half a second. Ryan laughed lightly. That's what I mean. You handle the privacy part, I'll handle the room. He said it with the confidence of someone dividing land he had never cleared. By Saturday, my mother had begun telling people the same version in person. I heard it first near the coat rack, after a volunteer orientation. Tessa is wonderful behind the scenes, but Ryan is the face people trust. She said it to two women from the altar committee, while smoothing the cuff of her camel coat. I was 10 feet away, with a clipboard in my hand. Behind the scenes, the phrase had changed. It was no longer just a description, it was an assignment. That afternoon, Ryan sent me a message with 3 bullet points. Total families served, biggest need, 1 touching story. He added, make it quick. I want to sound prepared. I stared at those words for a long moment. 1 touching story. As if Denise Porter's red scarf, Mrs. Alvarez's low-salt soup, and the school break bags for children whose names I kept coded for privacy were ornaments he could hang on a speech. I replied with 1 sentence. Please direct all formal program questions to the approved foundation materials. He sent back a laughing emoji. Then, don't be like that. I printed his message and put it in the blue binder. Not because I planned to wave it around. I did not. But patterns become clearer when they are laid flat. I saved the program proof, the text from my mother, the foundation email, and the updated service report. I did not add commentary. I did not underline. I did not write angry notes in the margins. The truth did not need decoration. On Monday morning, the church office smelled like coffee, printer toner, and the cinnamon candles June kept on her desk even though she never lit them. The final dinner programs were stacked in boxes by the copier. Ryan's name still appeared too large, but the worst line had been softened after June refused to approve the first proof. That did not stop him. At noon, the town's Facebook page posted a photo of Ryan standing in front of the pantry shelves with the caption, Local family leadership brings new hope before Thanksgiving award dinner. My phone buzzed 7 times in 15 minutes. One message was from a volunteer named Carol. You okay? She wrote. I looked across the room at the shelves, at the labels, at the cardboard boxes waiting for Tuesday pickup. No one had to ask the shelves if they were okay. They only had to make sure the food got where it belonged. I wrote back, pantry hours are still 4 to 7 today. See you then. Carol came at 3:30 anyway, and restocked cereal without making me explain. At 5:20 that evening, Patricia Lowell called. I was counting jars of peanut butter when her name appeared on my phone. Tessa, she said. I'm confirming tomorrow's public language. Her voice had the same smooth edge it always did, but there was something under it now. A pause before certain words. A carefulness. She asked whether Ryan Monroe held any operating role in the pantry's approved expansion plan. The jar in my hand was plastic, but I set it down as if it could break. No, I said. Ryan is not listed as an operating officer, coordinator, reporting contact, or funds manager. Patricia was quiet for one breath. Then she asked, will he be speaking as a family member, or as program leadership? I looked at the blue binder on the desk. I looked at the old brass key, hanging from a hook beside the door. That depends on whether anyone corrects him before he reaches the microphone, I said. Patricia did not ask me to explain my family. She asked me to confirm the service numbers for the last quarter. I gave them to her. She asked about the proposed freezer replacement. I gave her the quote amount. She asked how many households would be added under the expanded evening schedule. I gave her the estimate and the margin. Every answer was clean. Every number had a place to stand. Then she said, I'll make sure the presentation language is correct. She did not say more. She did not have to. Through the office wall, I could hear chairs being dragged across the fellowship hall floor for the next night's dinner, metal legs scraping in long lines over polished tile. The room was being built around Ryan's moment. The truth was already inside it. By Tuesday evening, Mill River had dressed itself like a town that wanted to be photographed. The fellowship hall behind First Methodist was strung with paper leaves, gold ribbon, and white lights that blinked softly over the serving tables. Someone had set little pumpkins down the center of each long table, and the whole room smelled like turkey gravy, coffee, sweet potatoes, and the cinnamon hand soap from the women's restroom. It was ordinary. That made it sharper. Big betrayals do not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes they arrive beside a folding table with a plastic tablecloth and a stack of paper napkins printed with pumpkins. I arrived at 6:50, 2 p.m., with the blue binder in a plain tote bag. I did not carry it like a weapon. I carried it the way I carried everything for the pantry, close enough to reach, quiet enough not to make a scene. The hall was already more than half full. Business owners stood near the coffee urns. Church elders moved between tables with name tags on their sweaters. The two women from the altar committee waved at my mother, who stood near the front in her camel coat and pearl earrings, receiving compliments as if she had baked the entire evening herself. Ryan was by the podium. Of course he was. He wore a navy suit and a silver tie I had never seen before, one hand in his pocket, the other resting lightly on the lectern as people came up to congratulate him before anything had been announced. He had learned how to look humble without stepping away from attention. When he saw me, he gave a small public smile, the kind meant for everyone watching, not for me. Tess, he said. Glad you made it. My mother turned at his voice. Her eyes went first to my dress, then to my tote bag, then to the empty space beside the volunteer table near the back wall. There you are, she said. We saved you a spot. She pointed without pointing, just a little movement of 2 fingers. It was the same gesture she used to direct delivery men at the dental office, polite enough to deny, if challenged. The seat she meant was not with the family at the front. It was behind a centerpiece, near the coffee refill station, where I could be useful and out of the sightline when Ryan stepped forward. I looked at the front table. There were name cards for my mother, Ryan, Pastor Whitcomb, 2 town council members, and Patricia Lowell. Mine was not there. That was new. In all the years of being placed behind Ryan, I had at least been allowed to sit near the thing I had built. That night, they did not just want my silence. They wanted my absence arranged neatly. I'll stand for now, I said. My voice did not rise. Ryan's smile twitched at one corner. My mother leaned closer and lowered her voice just enough to make the insult private while the humiliation stayed public. Please don't make tonight difficult. Then she patted my forearm, light as dust, and turned back toward Patricia, who had just entered with a black folder under one arm. At 7:18, the master of ceremonies tapped the microphone twice. The room settled in layers. First the children, then the silverware, then the low conversations by the dessert table. I took a place along the side wall, close enough to see the podium, far enough that no one could accuse me of crowding the moment. The oversized check was on a narrow table to the right of the lectern, covered halfway by a navy cloth. I could see the number from where I stood. $300,000. The zeros looked almost theatrical, under the lights. The program moved quickly at first. Prayer. Dinner blessing. A thank you to the volunteers. A joke about green bean casserole that made the front tables laugh. At 7:31, Pastor Whitcomb spoke about hunger in small towns, how need often hides behind clean porches and polite smiles. I watched my mother nod with her hands folded in her lap. She looked moved. She always looked moved when the right people could see her. At 7:38, the master of ceremonies lifted the final envelope. And now, he said, we come to a transformational moment for the Mill River Community Pantry. A little sound went through the room. The soft intake of a crowd preparing to applaud. Ryan straightened. My mother touched his sleeve. Patricia stood on the other side of the podium with her folder closed against her ribs, not smiling, not frowning, just waiting. Then my mother was invited to say a few words on behalf of the Monroe family. That was the move. Not Ryan speaking first. Not the check being handed over quietly. My mother wanted the family story placed in the air before anyone with authority could correct it. She walked to the microphone slowly, shoulders back, chin lifted, every inch the mother of the man she believed the town had come to honor. Harold would have loved this night, she began. A few people nodded. My father's name softened the room, and she knew it would. She spoke about service. She spoke about legacy. She spoke about how some people were born to see needs before others could name them. Her eyes moved to Ryan, not to me. Our family has always believed in showing up, she said. And over these past years, I have watched my son Ryan carry that spirit into the community in a way that would have made his father proud. Ryan lowered his head. Humble. Practiced. The first clap came from someone near the front, then another, then a small wave of approval. I kept my hands folded around the strap of my tote bag. My mother was not finished. She smiled, and there it was, the sentence she had sharpened for the room. Tessa has always had a good heart, but Ryan is the one who brought this pantry into the light. The hall clapped. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to make the sound roll over the tables. Enough to make Ryan step back as if overcome. Enough to make my mother glow. The blow landed exactly where she aimed it, not in my chest, but in the space between my name and my work. She had not called me lazy. She had not called me cruel. She had done something cleaner. She had made me small while sounding kind. The clock over the kitchen door read 7:40. That was the minute printed on the program for the award presentation. It was also the minute the pantry stopped being a family story and became a matter of public record. The master of ceremonies moved toward the oversized check. A photographer from the county paper lifted her camera. Ryan took one step forward. My mother turned slightly so the audience could see him pass her, the chosen son, moving from applause to money. I saw the trap clearly then. My mother had set it up so either choice could be used against me. If I stood and said, "That is not true," I would become the daughter who ruined Thanksgiving. If I stayed silent, Ryan would become the face attached to a restricted award the pantry could not afford to have mishandled. If I cried, they would call me emotional. If I argued, they would call me jealous. So I chose neither. I looked at Patricia. She had opened her folder. Her thumb rested on the top page, and her eyes had gone still in the way careful people go still when a sentence in a room does not match a sentence in a file. That was when my breathing settled. The room was loud, but the work was quiet. The pantry did not need me to defend my pride. It needed me to protect its name. Ryan reached the edge of the podium. The master of ceremonies said, "Ryan Monroe, would you join us to accept this transformational support on behalf of the pantry?" My mother's smile widened. Ryan lifted his right hand, already half reaching toward the check. Patricia did not move. It was such a small thing that only the front tables noticed at first. The check remained flat on the table. The photographer lowered her camera half an inch. The master of ceremonies turned to Patricia with a polite, confused smile, waiting for her to take her place beside Ryan. She adjusted one page in her folder, stepped toward the microphone, and spoke in a voice so even it made the room quiet around it. Before we proceed, she said, may I have the program director join us for the compliance confirmation? Ryan laughed once, soft and quick, as if the word had been a formality. He took another step. My mother leaned toward the microphone before anyone could answer. That would be Ryan. Patricia looked down at the page in her folder. Then she looked past my mother, past Ryan, past the front table with my missing name card, and found me standing along the side wall with both hands on the strap of my tote bag. Tessa Monroe, she said, would you please come forward? If you have ever been called helpful by people who were taking credit for your work, leave just one word in the comments. Scene. Because what happened next did not sound like revenge. It sounded like a room realizing the check had nowhere to go. And I was still standing there, quiet as a closed door, when Patricia said my name. I did not hurry. That is what I remember most. Not the faces, not the lights, not even my mother's hand still resting on the edge of the microphone, as if she could keep the room arranged by touching it. I remember lifting the tote bag strap off my shoulder, setting it on my chair, and walking toward the podium with nothing in my hands. My shoes made a soft sound on the polished tile. 300 people had just been clapping for Ryan, and now they were listening to my footsteps. Ryan stayed beside the oversized check, his smile held in place like a pin through cloth. My mother shifted half a step, not enough to block me, just enough to remind me she thought the front of the room belonged to her. Patricia Lowell waited by the microphone with her black folder open. I stopped beside her, not beside Ryan, and looked at the page she had turned toward me. I can confirm the operating information if that is what the foundation requires, I said. My voice sounded ordinary. That helped. If I had sounded wounded, my mother would have known what to do with me. If I had sounded angry, Ryan would have known how to perform patience. But ordinary gave them nothing to hold. The master of ceremonies stepped back with the envelope still in his hand, and the room settled into a silence so complete I could hear the heating system click through the wall behind the stage. Patricia nodded once. For the public record, she said, please confirm the current number of households served monthly under the approved pantry plan. I gave the number. She asked for the expanded evening schedule. I gave the days, the hours, and the volunteer coverage. She asked about the freezer replacement. I gave the quote amount and the reason the existing unit could not support the projected increase. She asked how privacy was protected for recipients during pickup. I explained the coded slips, the staggered times, and the volunteer instructions, without looking at my mother. Ryan gave a short laugh into the side of the microphone. We've all worked hard on this. He spread one hand toward the room, generous and vague. A few people looked at him because that was what they were used to doing when Ryan spoke. I did not turn. I did not correct him. I only looked at Patricia and said, the pantry records are under the operating plan submitted last month. Patricia turned one page in her folder. It made a small clean sound. Then she read the name of the submitted program, the date of approval, and the designated operating contact. My name landed in the microphone, without decoration. Tessa Monroe, Program Director, Reporting Contact, Expansion Coordinator. Behind us, one of the volunteers at the projection table leaned forward, clicked twice, and the screen changed from Ryan's smiling photo to the foundation slide with the corrected line beneath the pantry name. There are silences that empty a room, and there are silences that fill it. This one filled it. My mother lowered the microphone half an inch. Ryan's fingers tightened around the edge of the podium until the skin over his knuckles lightened. Mrs. Alvarez, seated near the left aisle, placed one hand over the collar of her cardigan. June Wilkes looked down at the printed program in her lap, then closed it without folding the page. The photographer from the county paper lowered her camera and did not take the shot Ryan had been standing there to receive. Ryan looked from the screen to Patricia's folder, then to the oversized check lying flat on the table. He pulled at his cuff, though the sleeve was already straight. His jaw moved once before any words came out. My mother's lips parted, then closed again, then shaped a smile that did not reach the rest of her face. She glanced at me, and for the first time that night, there was no instruction in her eyes. No placement. No correction. Just a calculation that had stopped working. Ryan leaned closer to Patricia. There must be a misunderstanding. He said it softly, but the microphone caught enough of it. The words traveled farther than he meant them to. Someone near the coffee urn shifted in their chair. A fork touched a plate and stayed there. Patricia did not raise her voice. There is no misunderstanding in the approved file. She turned slightly, addressing the room now, not just Ryan. The Loden Family Foundation's award is restricted operating support for the Mill River Community Pantry under the expansion plan approved on October 28. The designated operating contact and reporting authority listed in that plan is Tessa Monroe. Pastor Whitcomb stepped forward then, his reading glasses still hanging from one hand. He looked smaller than he had during the blessing, but his voice was steady. The church office records reflect the same, he said. Tessa has served as pantry coordinator and operating lead. Ryan has assisted with public outreach on occasion, but he does not hold program authority. He did not sound cruel, that made it final. My mother turned toward him quickly. Pastor, this is a family project. Harold would have wanted. Patricia's hand rested lightly on the folder. She did not interrupt with force. She simply spoke into the space before my mother could fill it. The foundation cannot release restricted funds under a representation that does not match the approved operating responsibility. The sentence was calm, exact, and heavier than any accusation I could have made. The oversized check stayed on the table. The envelope stayed in the master of ceremonies' hand. Ryan stayed beside money he could not touch. The room understood before anyone explained it. Not because I had listed every Saturday morning, every delivery route, every coded pickup slip, or every time Ryan had borrowed a word and worn it like a suit. They understood because the one thing Ryan had reached for would not move toward him. All those zeros sat there in public, bright and flat, refusing to become his. My mother looked at the check, then at Ryan, then at me. She had not only praised the wrong child, she had placed the pantry, the money, the church, and Ryan himself in front of a locked door, then handed him a key that did not fit. Ryan's shoulders changed first. They dropped by the smallest amount, but I saw it. He was no longer standing like a man about to accept an award. He was standing like a man waiting for someone else to rescue his sentence. My mother looked at me again, and something in her face softened in the wrong order, too late to be tenderness and too exposed to be pride. For the first time, she was not seeing the helpful daughter behind the table. She was seeing the person everyone else now needed to hear from. Patricia turned to me. Tessa, can you confirm whether the pantry is prepared to proceed under the approved operating structure? The whole room was quiet enough for the question to settle over every table. I thought of my father's key, of the door that stuck in damp weather, of Denise Porter's red scarf and Mrs. Alvarez's low-salt soup. I thought of my mother's hand on Ryan's sleeve. Then I looked at the oversized check, still flat, still waiting. For the pantry, yes, I said. Not for my family's version of it. No one clapped right away. I was grateful for that. Applause would have made it feel like a victory over them, and that was not what I wanted. Patricia nodded, wrote something on the page in front of her, and told the room the award presentation would proceed after the public acknowledgement was corrected. The master of ceremonies swallowed, looked at the screen, and asked the projection table to update the slide. Ryan stepped back from the podium. My mother did not touch his sleeve this time. When the corrected slide came up, my name was not large. It was not glowing. It sat under the pantry name in the same plain font as the date and the foundation line. That was enough. Responsibility does not need glitter. It needs accuracy. I stood beside Patricia while she announced that the $300,000 would support expanded evening hours, cold storage, and delivery access for seniors. She handed me the envelope only after she had finished saying what the money was for. I held it with both hands. Across the room, my mother watched me like she was trying to match the woman at the microphone with the daughter she had sent to the volunteer table. Ryan looked down at the floor, one hand still worrying the edge of his cuff. I did not smile at them. I did not look away either. Some doors do not slam when they close. They only click, quietly, after the right name is finally on them. The next morning, Mill River did what small towns do. It repeated the story, until the edges changed. By noon, the county paper had updated its online article with the correct language. The Loden Family Foundation had awarded $300,000 in restricted operating support to the Mill River Community Pantry, under the direction of Tessa Monroe. My name was not in the headline. That was all right. It was in the sentence where responsibility lived. Ryan withdrew from the fundraising committee 2 weeks later. The official reason was work obligations, though everyone in town knew he had been free enough when the cameras were pointed his way. My mother was not asked to speak at the January update meeting. Pastor Whitcomb called me before the notice went out, careful and kind, and said the board wanted all future pantry communications to come through the operating team, not through family representatives. He sounded as if he expected me to apologize for the inconvenience. I did not. I only said, "That is best for the pantry." The money was released after the corrected acknowledgement was filed. We replaced the failing freezer in December, added 2 evening pickup windows in January, and started senior deliveries every Thursday before the roads iced over. Those were the consequences that mattered most to me. Not Ryan's embarrassment. Not my mother's quiet absence from the front table. The food moved. The doors opened. People who had been counting on the pantry did not have to pay for my family's performance. My mother came to see me in February, after closing time. I was wiping down the little table near the entrance when I heard her knock on the glass. She wore a gray coat instead of the camel one, and she held her purse with both hands in front of her, like she needed something to do with them. For a moment, I saw the older woman she was becoming, not the mother who had kept one hand on Ryan's sleeve. I unlocked the door. She stood just inside, looking at the shelves, the freezer, the coated slips, the hooks by the door. "I didn't know it was that much," she said. Her voice was smaller than it had been at the microphone. "I folded the cloth once, then set it on the table. You did not have to know every detail to know it was mine." She looked down. Her fingers moved over the clasp of her purse. "Ryan got carried away," she said. That was the old door opening again. I did not walk through it. "Ryan made his choices," I said. "You made yours." I told her she could volunteer if she wanted to serve under the same rules as everyone else. No speeches, no family language, no representing the pantry. No asking me to stand in the back so Ryan could look better in the front. She nodded, but I could tell the words cost her. They cost me, too. Boundaries often do. People talk about them like they are walls. Sometimes they are more like stitches. They hold closed what keeps reopening. I did not hate my mother after that. I also did not hand her the key. Spring came slowly that year. On the first warm Saturday in March, Carol brought tulips in a coffee can and set them on the check-in table. Mrs. Alvarez came with a paper bag of low-salt soup she had found on sale, proud as if she were delivering treasure. A boy named Eli, whose grandmother volunteered on Thursdays, sat cross-legged near the cereal shelf and stuck date labels on boxes with the serious face of a bank teller. Patricia stopped by without a camera, wearing jeans and carrying a clipboard, and asked whether the new delivery route was working for the East Side apartments. It was not a perfect family. It was something warmer than that. Nobody there needed me to disappear so they could feel important. Nobody called me helpful in a way that made me smaller. When the freezer hummed, when the doorbell chimed, when a volunteer laughed softly in the back room, I felt my father in the ordinary steadiness of it. I hung his old brass key on the hook by the pantry door, not because I needed it every day anymore, but because I wanted to remember what he had told me. Kindness still needs a name on the door. A boundary is not revenge. It is the door you finally stop leaving unlocked for people who only come in to move your name. I did not need my mother to clap for me. I needed her to stop handing my work to someone else. If you have ever been the dependable one, the quiet one, the one who remembers the appointments, fills the shelves, fixes the mistake, and then watches someone else step forward when the lights come on, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not selfish for wanting the truth spoken in the right place. You are not cruel for refusing to keep serving a version of family that only loves you when you are useful. And you are not alone. My name is Tessa Monroe. I am 35 years old, and I am still the woman behind that pantry door. The difference is, now my name is on it. That is my story. If someone in your life needs to hear that a boundary can be calm and still be final, share this with them. And if you feel safe doing it, tell me in the comments, what is one thing you built that your family never gave you credit for?